dreams don't die.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
I want to go ahead and I want to get to my review for The Sandman. Netflix is The Sandman, Chad. And, you know, for those that don't know, The Sandman, it's a fantasy. It's based on a fantasy horror comic by Neil Gaiman. Originally came out, I want to say, in the late 80s, like from 89. Had like a run to like the mid-90s, 95, 96. And there have been attempts to adapt this comic for decades. For as long as I've been alive, Chad. That's how long they've actually been trying to make this into a movie or a television show. It mostly follows the character of Dream, the Dream King, Morpheus, whatever you want to call him, Chad. Dream of the Endless, where he is pretty much the personification of dreams. He has this realm. It's a realm in which we go to when we are experiencing dreams or nightmares. And, you know, we see this character's interaction with many other supernatural forces and at least in terms of the comic, even DC superheroes like Batman and Superman and the Martian Manhunter and more magical themed ones like John Constantine. It's looked at as the magnum opus of Neil Gaiman. And one that I've read a number of books. I've never completed it, though, Chad. I fell off for whatever reason, not because I disliked it. I think, you know, you just get distracted and you move on to other things. But all of the books that I have read, I was a fan. And it's funny. The first time they attempted to adapt this, Chad, was actually the year in which I was born, in 1991, Chad. You had other people like Robert Avery, Quentin Tarantino's writing partner on Pulp Fiction, other projects, attempt to do an adaptation. You had the infamous producer John Peters, who wanted to do an adaptation of this work in the 90s and wanted to completely change it, chat. You know, like John Peters, who was the guy like who wanted Superman to fight a giant spider, who was the producer of, you know, the Burton Batman films, and of course, you know, Wild Wild West, things like that. Wanted to change it where he wanted to have the Dream be captured by a bunch of teenage girls at a slumber party. Wanted countless rave scenes. Wanted Dream to have like a cape and cowl, Chad, and punch people. You know, every other scene, like ridiculous. And there was a failed attempt to adapt this. Most recently, before the one that we got, there was a failed adaptation in which they were going to bring on Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the mid-20-teens. I feel like he was going to be a producer. He was going to also possibly star as the character of Morpheus of Dream, as the Dream King. But that eventually fell apart as well. He exited after numerous creative differences, I think like in 2016, 2017, around that time period. And now Warner Bros. Is like, fuck it. All right, well, we're not going to try to make this a movie, which is the smartest option in my opinion. That's because this is such a large story with so many characters, and to give them justice, you would need to do it long form. And a television show is the best way to handle the material. Even before they adapted it for Netflix, I think a lot of people and myself, that we all said like that's probably the best way to do it. There's just so much content with this book. It's very, very deep, very rich with lore and exposition and material and character. And so funny enough, it's not on HBO. But the one thing that's weird to me is like they didn't put it on HBO or HBO Max, which you figured that's where it would go. Instead, I guess Netflix bought the rights and they did their own adaptation, removing most, if not all, of the DC characters, like the superheroes, like Batman and Superman and you know, Martian Manhunter. They kept some of them, like, you know, John Constantine. Well, a version of John Constantine. For the most part, it's very much separate. It's not a part of the DC universe. So, for those of you who were excited to see Dream or Morpheus interact with those characters, I'm just going to tell you like right now, that's not a part of this series. He interacts with a whole bunch of other characters, but I feel like for the most part, that was probably the smartest decision. It would have been kind of distracting, honestly, especially with just the state of things at Warner Brothers and their DC cinematic universe, the DCU. We don't even know who fucking Superman is at this point. You know, we have three different Batmans. Rob Pattinson, Michael Keaton, and Ben Affleck. It's all over the place. So it would have been it's easier not including those characters. So if you're coming with those expectations, I'm just going to let you know, they're just not a part of that. Not part of it. Naya asked me a question. Also, Chris, you want to get back to me? I'm sorry, Naya. I will interrupt my review. of the Sandman to read about your almost Karen moment at a Mexican restaurant. It's starring the slacker stoner one who always does a piss poor job making my foods, talking shit about me in Spanish. Okay, I'm actually glad I stopped the review of this. I don't know Spanish, but I do know body language. Then, when they were preparing the bread for my torta, the guy handling it had bare hands and undercooked my bread. Then the owner and her manager came out and resolved the problem before the fire coming out of my eyes melted the building. Damn. Well, you're almost Karen moment. Wow, I love that. That's funny. I'm going to keep this in the goddamn review, by the way. It's going up on YouTube. That's going up on YouTube. Stranger Shoe, good to see you. Welcome, Stranger Shoe. Pleasure to have you here. Oh, and we got a new follower in here, too, chat. Malik 406. Thank you so much for the follow. You're my new Huckleberry. I hope you're doing very, very well. But, chat, again, thank you, Naya, for sharing your Mexican food restaurant experience. Yes, I am very grateful and very thankful for that. Thank you so much. But in regards to the Sandman, chat, like this has had 30 years of development hell. Projects they tried to get off the ground and consistently failed. And this is the most recent attempt. And I'll tell you what, chat, it is more successful than I could have ever imagined. Kind of go over my general thoughts on the series before we get into a lot of the nitty-gritty details of the characters and certain plots and whether they work, whether they're translated well, or whether it was even possible to translate them well. I feel like they adapted the source material very well, and it's I'm kind of shocked by how faithful it is for the most part. Now they do take some small liberties with the aesthetics, of course. But they do expand on a number of the characters, well, just their looks and backgrounds. Like, so for example, one of the things that people have been saying in regards to Dream, who's being played by Tom Sturridge in the show, it's like, Dream is this chalk white, very pale skin. He has these black eyes. He's very ethereal. And in this series, they make him more human. And I think that was a very smart decision on their part, since he's the character that we often follow the most throughout this entire series. And to have this character who has these kind of just black, very alien-esque eyes that are very disconcerting, that was a good aesthetic choice in my opinion. You're able to empathize with this character who, for the most part is very stoic and lacks a lot of emotion. And they do that for a number of other characters in the series, some of them which are just like, wow, they ripped them right out of the comic and there they are on screen. They do a great job. They do some other changes, which some people probably will be a little mixed on. But for the most part, in terms of the character aesthetics and providing more depth to them, I feel like they handled that extremely well. The production design, I think, is also very good. Occasionally there's like some wonky CGI, but nothing that fell woefully egregious. They use a combination of practical effects, of special effects. There is some CGI, and for the most part, the CGI is good. There's a couple of times where it's like, okay, you didn't spend a lot of money on that, but for the stuff they did spend money on, that's on full display. I get the sense this is a very expensive show. And one of the other things that impressed me, chap, because Sandman is always it's unadaptable. It's like it was like The Watchmen. It was like Sandman, The Watchmen. Like you would fail to adapt these appropriately. But the thing, and because of its lore and how heavy the exposition is sometimes, and how dense the material seemingly is. But I gotta tell you, chat, there is very little word vomit or very little exposition dumps in this show. I feel like it moves at a nice pace when it comes to the lore. They, it's always there, it's always present, but they kind of trickle it out from episode to episode per episode. You're having Dream basically deliver exposition to a supporting character as they're having an inciting action at the same time. They're going on an adventure, whether it's to the waking world, which is our planet Earth, or like to hell, or these other various dimensions where he has to visit his siblings, chat, like whether it be death or desire and things like that. That I was actually surprised by how well they handled it, because I'm thinking you're just going to have what I was shocked they didn't do this. I thought they were going to do the whole Star Wars thing, and even Star Wars, Star Wars is like one of the few movies that is able to get away with like the opening title crawl to give you exposition, and even Star Wars fucks it up. on occasion, chat. You know, where they talk about like, oh, it's the state of the rebellion, and there's this evil empire. They got a thing called a Death Star. It's like, oh, cool. But then you'll get like the Phantom Ministers like talking about trade routes and the Trade Federation and a blockade. It's like, what are you talking about here? They don't have that. They do a great job within the first episode immersing you in this world, making it also a period piece, which is pretty cool just to look at, chat, aesthetically. And it works. It works. I never felt like they were sitting me down and saying, all right, here you go, dummy. This is how the world works. They never felt like that. It just feels like it was very well paced out, and I appreciate that. I also think the casting is quite good in the show. Now, there are very few weak performances. There's a couple that I was kind of confused by, especially in regards to some characters who are like going through this horrific experience. And then by the next episode, they're like, I'm just so glad I'm with you right now. And they're all hunky-dory and they're very precocious. And that's kind of in like the last half of the season. There's one character in particular where I'm just like, I'm kind of confused by them and the experience they went through. How they were acting in one episode and then the very next episode, how they're acting, we're just going, yay. It's like, yeah, this kind of feels inconsistent to me. I didn't buy it. But despite that, their performance and the performances of many of the others are very good. I was very impressed with the acting. There's a lot of characters in this series, chat. Some of which I'm going to bring up, some of which I'm not, because it's just impossible. There's a lot, but the ones that didn't impress me, you had Tom Sturridge, who plays the character of Dream, of Morpheus. He does a great job. They nailed the look, of course. Taking some liberties, but I feel like making it work very well. His voice is fantastic, chat. Boyd Holbrook, who plays one of the villains in the series, the Corinthian, who has like these teeth for eyes. It's Boyd Holbrook, chat. Charm and charisma is just shooting out his ass. He's like, as I live and breathe, the Dream Lord. He's great. Well, every time he's on screen, chat, you're just kind of captivated by his performance. He fucking looks great, he sounds great, and he's deadly as all hell. You also have Kirby Howell Baptiste, chat, who has been cast as the character of Death, who is a beloved character from the series. She has a very specific look from the series. They do change that. She's played by a black woman, but the episode that she has is probably, honestly, chat, my favorite episode in the series. We're just saying something because there's a lot of great episodes in this show, but her particular episode is like, wow, they are doing some amazing things. They're just kind of beautiful, very wholesome, earnest scenes. You also have Ferdinand Kingsley, which again, so you may not recognize some of these people. This guy plays a character named Hob, who's in one episode, chat, but he's this guy who was made immortal by death, and he has these interactions with Dream, with Morpheus, every 100 years, and so we kind of see him throughout the centuries. So we see him from like the late 1300s all the way up to modern day. And that's a part of Death's episode. That was brilliant. I love those interactions, love the changing aesthetics and time periods. Thought it was really, really cool. And just, it kind of feeds into Dream's own perceptions of humanity and how that changes over time depending on what century he's in. I thought that was awesome. And David Thewlis, however you say his name, Professor Lupin, chat, from Harry Potter. David Thewlis, he plays the character of John Dee, or Dr. Destiny from the DC Comics, who is a Justice League villain. His performance is one of the best. He is so scary and creepy and sympathetic in the show. He gets pretty much several episodes, but he gets one where it's mostly him, and he's captivating. His episode, which is called 24/7, which all takes place in like really one location inside a diner, and how he manipulates the situation there is brilliant. Definitely my second best episode, and probably one of the scariest ones in the series. Where that's the other thing about this show. Because you think of like, oh, the Sandman's fantasy. It's kind of all about different genres, because that's what the whole thing is, really. Like Neil Gaiman, he wanted to make a story that is literally about storytelling, the process of storytelling, how we tell stories in different genres, and that's what Sandman is. And so you get an episode which is a period piece, a period piece drama, something that might be akin to like Downton Abbey. You'll have a horror episode, a bottle horror episode takes place in one place, which is filled to the gills with body horror and has slasher sensibilities. You'll have one which is very fantastical and you're going off into all these different realms and dimensions, hell itself, chat. Or you'll get one where it's about just people trying to live their lives, or how people are like living their lives in their last day or their last moments, and how do people go into death? Like, how does that process works? It's like so many different genres here, chat, and it's a lot of material, but I feel like for the most part, it's done very well. Now to get in more than negative, which again, there's very few negative things about this show. I do have a couple of issues, but overall, I think it's very good. There is some pacing issues, I would say, after episode 6, after Death's episode, and it deals with this character named Rose Walker. Again, I feel like her performance is good, but it's definitely the longest of all of them. You had the initial episodes where it's about kind of like Death acquiring the objects that were stolen from him when he spent his century in imprisonment, basically. But you have these other episodes that sets up this other conflict, this other threat, and I feel like that goes on for a little too long. And I feel like it's kind of spinning its wheels. Not that it was necessarily bad, but it definitely felt the weakest of all the episodes that we had gotten. And the other thing is, and this is also in the last several episodes, there are some very odd dialogue choices that just come across like really corny. And it was mentioned actually by Corey Coleman of Double Toast in his review, where all I'll say is there's a serial killer convention where serial killers come together and they commiserate and they talk about how they kill, why they kill, and everything like that. And they for whatever reason, in this one sequence, people are making these serial killer puns. It's like, oh, traffic was just murder. It's like, you know what? I just decided to go to bed early. I was dead tired. And they're like all in succession. And I'm like, okay, like I get the sense you're supposed to, you're trying to be funny. The thing is, though, like the circumstance that we find our characters, it's supposed to be like extraordinarily threatening and dangerous, but you're kind of making a joke. And so I was kind of confused. It's like a weird tonal whiplash in the serial killer. Not that, there's some great stuff of the serial killers, believe me. And that serial killer convention, you killed it, bro. Like that, they legitimately say that. Nah, you joke, but they legitimately say that. And it just, I'm like, this just didn't work. And you could have removed that dialogue completely, and I would have been like, I would have been okay with it. It was very, very odd. I just don't know why it was there, because so much of the dialogue in the previous episodes was so well written and very beautiful and very poignant, and it felt earnest. So that was kind of weird. But for the most part, I think it's great. I think it's a very good adaptation. And kind of getting into, the character, which there's a lot of characters in this series, Chad. There's a ton, and it's just not, I'm not capable of going over every single performance, so I'm just going to talk about the ones that I thought were very good. Tom Sturridge as Morpheus, as Dream, as the Dream King. He's great. I feel like a lot of people had their fan casting for 3 decades who they always wanted as Morpheus, as Dream. I always said, Alan Rickman. I feel like if you wanted to go a little older, Alan Rickman would have been the perfect choice to play this role. I feel like he has the right voice for it. He kind of has that, his cadence. He kind of has that air of superiority, kind of like Snape, of course. I feel like for a lot of people that were seeing Alan Rickman in the Harry Potter movies, that's your guy. Obviously, it couldn't happen since Alan Rickman obviously has passed away, sadly. But Tom Sturridge does a great job. He does a great job, and clearly he's based a lot of the way he, conducts himself off of Neil Gaiman, because Neil Gaiman is clearly said he wrote himself into his own book, Chad. He wrote himself as the hero, as Dream. That's obvious who it is. He's the author. Dream's the author. The author is Neil Gaiman. But I thought Tom Sturridge did a great job. Boyd Holbrook, as I said, charisma shooting out his asshole, Chad, as the Corinthian. He is this nightmare that is he's one of the first of the nightmares of the dreams to escape from Morpheus's dream world. And he's the one that inspires serial killing. That's his whole thing. He's in the first several episodes, and then he kind of takes a break, and he comes back, especially with, in the last half, where it's very much focused on him. But he's amazing in the show. Yeah, anytime he's on screen, you feel threatened by him, but also very charmed by him, Chad. He does a great job. I'm probably going to get this actress's names wrong, but Vivienne Acheampong, I can't say her name. The actress who plays Lucienne, who is the librarian, chat. Now, they changed it in the comics, and in the comics, pretty much Lucien looks like Alfred from Batman. It kind of has that kind of butler attire, chat. Old British white guy, skinny old British white guy. Here they have it where they change it, and they have a black actor, but she does a great job. I feel like she nails it. She's kind of like the one character that isn't afraid of Dream's allies, really, to basically say, now, settle down, okay? Like, she tries to be a straight shooter with him. She tries to, she chastises him when she thinks that, he's wrong, especially because she's the one we see in the series, chap, due to Dream's imprisonment for 100 years. She's the one that's trying to maintain the dream world, the dream dimension, so it doesn't start falling apart completely. So she's trying to do her best. But I like her role. Of the other allies, this one I was not a big fan of. Patton Oswalt, who plays the voice of Matthew, Dream's emissary and replacement Raven. I like Patton Oswalt a lot. I think he's a great comedian. I think he's a great actor. He's been some great. Check out Big Fan, Chad. That's like one of his best dramatic roles. He's done some other great stuff too. But I just, for whatever reason, the way in which he was talking, and I get probably why, it just didn't feel like he was actually having a conversation. It just kind of felt like he was reading dialogue. It felt awkward to me. He does the best he can. And plus, when you read a comic, you have a certain voice for certain characters in mind, and I just never heard the voice of Matthew as Patton Oswalt. I always thought of it maybe as, if I had to pick Simon Pegg or something like that. That to me would have made more sense for Matthew. But again, that's just how I feel. But it felt a little awkward, not awful, not bad, but just a little awkward, chap. David Thewlis, who plays the character of John D, Dr. Destiny, he, as I said before, fantastic. His performance, he's like this broken. He is the product of this generational cycle of abuse that goes, decades upon decades and decades. His like the whole circumstances of that. His mother was an acolyte and lover of Charles Dance's character, who was this amateur magician and wizard called the Magus. She gets pregnant, and, he doesn't want the baby. And so she absconds, and she leaves. She has managed to, prolong her immortality. The actress who plays her is very good. I don't have her name up here, but she's very good. But she has this son, and she indulges him, and she gives him this powerful object, this ruby, which is one of Dream's objects. And basically, you can create dreams with it. You can make dreams reality. You can impose your reality or your vision of reality on other people. And it's left him very broken. In the comics, he's deformed, and he's like a monster. Here, you can tell something happened to him. He's very weakened, and he's obviously insane. The circumstances of the show, you realize that he's been in prison for like 30 years, or this weird prison. It takes place in Buffalo, New York, matter of fact, my hometown. But the episode, there are so many scenes in which he's with somebody, and you're like, oh, God, what's going to happen to him? There's so much tension. They do a great job with him, and then there's an entire episode that is just focused on him with these other just new people at this diner. It's called 24/7, and it's very creepy. It's very disturbing, and it really just showcases wow, this guy. I know David Thewlis was a very talented actor, but to see him in something like this and under these circumstances, it was pretty amazing. So loved his performance in the movie, in the series. Edgy Berserker, thank you for the very kind raid. I hope you're doing very well. What were you playing? What were you streaming today? I'm curious. And then we have some other ones, which are some of the big kind of maybe controversial casting choices. We have Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer Morningstar, which, in the comic is male. He's the ruler of hell. Here they changed it. Some of the thing is, though, for some of the recasting that they've done, they've made a lot of the, they changed the gender, but the characters seem kind of androgynous to me. And Gwendolyn Christie, where it's I'm like, okay, I guess you're female, but at the same time, you seem kind of androgynous. In any case, she plays Lucifer Morningstar, the ruler of hell, and I feel like she does a good job. The one thing is, Gwendolyn, because she's a big lady, she has that size. She's like 7 feet 2 inches or whatever, chat, and you feel her presence. She brings that physical presence, which is what probably you want for Lucifer. But she does a great job, I feel like. There's not a lot of her. She gets one episode really that's dedicated to her and Dream and their interactions, and it's pretty good. And then she comes back a little bit in the latter half of the season. But I feel like she did a great job. You know, it's definitely not what I originally thought of Lucifer. You know, I think for a lot of people, when they think of Lucifer nowadays, they think of Lucifer from the 2016 TV series, which I think was on CW, but then it got canceled, or NBC, and now it's on Netflix. And actually, there was a period, chat, where they had approached the actor who plays Lucifer on that show, Tom Ellis, to play that version of the character on Netflix's The Sandman. Like, that was the original intention. But I feel like Neil Gaiman said it would have been confusing and weird, and like the version of that Lucifer, where in that one it's a police procedural show where he solves murders, which is weird. Like, why the fuck would Lucifer? It doesn't matter, but it would have been weird to then have that character come on there, because that Lucifer is kind of like, I'm becoming a better person, and here in this series, very villainous. Very, very villainous with their political machinations, their manipulations, chat. And so it wouldn't make any sense. So I understand why they did recast, but I think Golden Christie does a great job, and they use her size to great effect. She's very, very intimidating. Another recasting, or not a recasting, but another change, at least of a character's race or ethnicity. You have Curly Hal Baptista's Death. Now, in the comics, Death is pretty much your prototypical goth girl. You know, very pale. You know, you got the black tattoos and everything like that. Kind of iconic. However, Hal Baptiste does a fantastic job as this character. What she does so well is she captures the kindness, the wholesomeness, the understanding of the character from the book. I think when we think of Death, we think of Death as this grim reaper, this evil, nefarious force. And what's so good about this version of Death, and it's my favorite episode. It's the best episode, in my opinion, of the show, which is saying something, because there's a lot of great episodes. That even I kind of forgot, like, oh yeah, Death is this. How she takes people, how her approach to death is like probably not what a lot of people think. Like, we think of Death as probably, from a lot of people, like, we think of it as being very scary. And she doesn't. She eases you into it. She talks to you. She holds your hand. She has some words, but she says, like, you know, it's like, we have to go. Even if but I got to do this, I have to do that, and everything. She's like, I understand that, but we have to go. And I really like the actors they even bring in that have that she interacts with, that are in the process of dying, are very good. I love the subtlety with it. And there's some ones that it's like, oh shit, that's right. Like, a death affects all people of all ages, Chad. And they nail those scenes very well. You feel it. Some of which will probably bring, you know, tears to your eye. The first one we see is one where she's dealing with this old man who's this violinist. And it's been a lot of the marketing, Chad. I think they put it out there for people. It's one that we talked about also on Double Toasted. Handled very well. And there's several other scenes afterwards that are also handled equally well, in my opinion. Just kind of go, oh my God. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's probably, I think it's going to be a lot of people's favorite episode in the series and some of their favorite moments. Acting. And the thing is, like, Dream, he's there, but he's not really the focus. He's observing. What Death is just trying to show him is the beauty of death, of humanity, and where it can bring out the best of us. And, you know, it was very good. I really like how they handled it. In that same episode, we have Ferdinand Kingsley, who plays the character of Hob, who is this immortal, who's, you know, basically made a deal with death, and would live every 100 years, or would keep on living. And every 100 years, they would meet with the Dream to have a conversation about what it's like. Because Dream and Death made a bet saying that, oh, well, he would not want to keep living 100 years and all these centuries. He'll be begging for death. But he never does. He always experiences, like, the different centuries and all the sociopolitical things. It's very interesting. It's very fun. And I like how they change the aesthetics to, like, whatever time period they're in, from the, you know, the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and into the 20th, and then 21st century. I really like that. And that actor, they nail it. Plus, you just love costuming and things like that, chat, and just period pieces. You'll dig the hell out of the second half of the Death episode. I thought it was very good. He does a great job. I don't know what I've seen that guy in before, but he nailed it. He nailed it. And then we kind of get to the last two characters, in which there's a lot. Charles Dance is in the series. Charles Dance doing his thing, Chad, being an asshole. He's doing his Tywin Lannister. He fucking nails it. There's a lot of other characters in this series, too. All the props to them, but I can't go over everybody. I want to bring up these last two, Chad, because they are the focus of the second half of the season. Episode 7 on. And that is Kaio Ra is Rose Walker, and Eddie Carnaja is Jed Walker. And, you know, they play a big, important kind of, they're like a plot device. They're kind of the MacGuffin of the second half. There's something about them that is causing the destruction of the dream world. That's all I'll say. And it's not that the performances are bad or anything like that. I just feel like that storyline goes on for a little longer. In regards to Jed, all I'll say is with his story, he is caught in a situation for about 2 episodes where he's the victim of abuse, let's just say. He's a victim of child abuse. Like, for a long period of time, chat. Like, Harry Potter would go, Jesus Christ, and I thought I had it bad, living in the fucking, underneath the stairs. This kid's, like, living in a basement with a furnace going on, even though it's the middle of summer, with rats just eating his, his little fingers. It's like, oh, God. And the thing is, though, circumstances happen. I'm not going to tell you how. But he gets out of that situation, and he is just like, yippee! It's kind of weird. Where his whole life is like, things are great. Life is, I'm just going to be precocious. I'm going to run around a hotel room and just do hide and seek. It's like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense based on what he's been experiencing for, what we learned is probably years. Years, if not, at the very least, months. Let's say at least months. That never made any sense to me personally. Not that the actor did a bad job. There were some great scenes with him and with his sister, but that was the thing. I'm like, this is kind of confusing. This doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, I don't know how a character would act that way based on what they had experienced an episode ago to make that switch, unless they're fucking crazy, which might be the case. But yeah, just as a wrap-up, Chad, honestly, like I said, I'm just kind of surprised by how accurate this adaptation is in most cases. How good it actually is. Actually, there's one other thing I wanted to add. There's one other thing I wanted to add, Chad, that I forgot to mention. And that is, and I'll get to my wrap-up. Jenna Coleman as Johanna Constantine, which is probably the biggest controversial casting pick. Obviously, this is not... John Constantine was part of the original Sandman run, and they reverse the gender. They make John Joanna, make him female. And... Now, the reason as to why that is because they couldn't. I was told actually that they can't even use the John Constantine character. Apparently, the license is there's a new series that they're working on. I guess J.J. Abrams is producing it with Warner Brothers, but that's why that's the main reason why they couldn't use John. It wasn't just because they wanted to change him to female for the sake of doing it as a stunt cast. And he's like, no, they literally couldn't use the character. And so they're like, all right, well, we'll use Joanna Constantine, which has been, it's weird because the rights issues are over the place. And it also just shows you the state of things at Warner Brothers DC and how they're just fucking up. But I will tell you this. I feel like Jenna Coleman, she does a good job as Joanna Constantine. She definitely has the personality of the character down. Very salty. And she's doing the same things that we see John do in the comics. But if I have a criticism, and it's a criticism that's not just applied to her, it's applied to all of the live-action adaptations of John Constantine that we've gotten, including especially Keanu Reeves, but also with Matt Ryan, who a lot of people say is the best version of the character, which probably maybe. But the thing that has always bothered me about the adaptation of John Constantine is that he's a piece of shit. He's a huge piece of shit. All right, he's he's the kind not a lot of people like him, and for good reason. A lot of people who are his friends fucking die horribly. He's an alcoholic. He smokes like a goddamn chimney shed. He's a chain smoker. He has a really bad attitude about things. He probably smells like shit. Like, he's the kind of guy where if he walks into a bar and you turn your head and you see him, like, oh, it's fucking John Constantine. That's what people's reactions should be when they see him. He, as I said before, he's 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, all right? That's how he is. And for whatever reason, in these adaptations, they kind of just have him or her just looking like a fucking model. Constantly looking clean, looking crisp, just like, oh, this is smelling good. It's like that just doesn't work. They don't have him smoke. That's because the weird fucking rules where have people have characters smoking in movies now and in TV shows. And I'm like, that's a part of him. He's one of his most famous storyline, Dangerous Habits, deals of him being a fucking smoker and having cancer. And so, it's like when Joanna Constantine's in the show and the actor's doing a good job, but she looks incredible. She looks hot. And it's like, that's not what John or Joanna should look like. She should look like a fucking mess. And they have it because it doesn't make any sense, because you have it where we go to her office or home and it looks like shit, but she just feels like a foreign element where she is dressed at the goddamn nines, right? But everything else around her, just you could just tell, it just smells like mold. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense here. This is weird. And it's not the actress's fault. It's not her fault. It's just, I don't understand why they only take half measures with the adaptation of John or Joanna or whatever Constantine. You know, it's almost they're afraid, and I think this is part of it. They're afraid to make the character an asshole, even though John, Joanna, Constantine is an asshole. They are inherently. You know, they try, and maybe they try to get a little bit of a nice little slice of happiness, but they fuck up a lot. And that's what makes them compelling. That's what makes them interesting to watch in their various adventures. But in here, it's just weird that, and again, it's not just in this show. It's also in the NBC CW version, and also in the Keanu Reeves version. I'm like, in my opinion, they haven't gotten that right yet, and it didn't always work for me in the show. But despite that, you know, talking about kind of like my wrap up, and I want to hear your guys' opinion as well. Like I said, I'm surprised at how accurate, for the most part, this adaptation is, and how good it is. You know, to be honest, I didn't have a lot of interest in this. You know, I thought the marketing was okay. I was like, trailer looks nice, but we'll see. But I think a lot of the storytelling is incredible. I think it's very well written. I think it's coming from a really a great place of earnestness, and in many cases, a lot of the episodes, and there's many scenes where they're quite beautiful. I'm like, wow, this just shows you the power of storytelling and people's perception on scary themes, which of death, where death can be a beautiful thing. It does it very well. It does it very well for the most part. Has a few issues. Has some maybe pacing issues at the end, but for the most part, it succeeds. It succeeds more than it doesn't. So yeah, if I had to give this a rating as of right now, chat, you know, I'm feeling like this is like a low full price. It's like a nice low full price right now, chat. If they just made a few corrections, especially in that last half, those last several episodes, I think I'd bump it up to a full price. But for right now, it's a low full price. I definitely think it's worth watching on Netflix. And if you're a Sandman fan, I think you'll like a lot of what they've done. And even if you're not a Sandman fan, if you're not familiar with the books, I think this is a nice entry point too. It's like I said, it's not the material's not too dense, it's not too heavy. They take you on this journey. They trickle out the stuff, throughout the episodes, and so don't be afraid if it's too much, because it's not. They do a good job of pacing that out, chap. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I recommend it. A low full price for me on that double toasted scale. What about you guys? How do you feel about the Sandman? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you like some of the changes they made?